Dali, sorry. Hello, good afternoon. Ngayon pa lang nag-connect yung ating Facebook Live. Good afternoon, sir. Siyempre kasama rin po natin si Engineer Nelson Ramirez. Hello? Nako, wala pa yata si Engineer. Hi. Okay, parang meron na naman tayong technical difficulties at ang ating special guest ay nawawala din. Ganito talaga yata, Chief, ang ating kapag live ang ating show.
Parang ganun. Pero,
Ayan.
nandyan si Miguel. Nandyan. Oh.
Ayan. Siyempre, guest din po natin ngayon, kasama natin ngayong hapon na ito, ang CEO and President ng CF Sharp na si Mr. Miguel Angel Rocha. Hi.
Yeah, I'm sorry the audio is not good. It's choppy, but thank you for having me on the show. Really happy to be here. Looking forward to good and fruitful discussion regarding the topic of the day.
Yes, it's so nice to have you. I'm very sure you're very familiar with our topic today. Ang topic natin ngayon, Chief, talagang alam na alam na alam na alam na daming alam no. Yung topic natin ngayon ay meron bang batas na pwedeng sumugpo sa age limit? At ang makabagbag damdaming tanong na ano ba ang solusyon natin sa age limit? Subukan natin simulan sa ating first question. Is there, I'll translate it to you, Mr. Rocha, is there a law that can help people prevent or the answer to the timeless question of age limit? Is there something that legal that can help our seafarers? Because it's the forever question, right? How can they be protected against age limit? Is there such a law that will protect them from not being rehired because of their age?
Uh, you know, it's difficult to understand how there could be such a law to prevent against something that does not really exist. The problem with the idea of age limits is not one of legality, but rather one of understanding. And I think that the best thing that we can do to help seafarers deal with the problems that come with working in an industry where physical ability is one of the main components of eligibility. There are no age limits. There are no official age limits in the industry. There are no international or domestic regulations regarding seafarers. Is there indicated any age restrictions or age limits? I think what people need to recognize is that in working in the maritime industry as a seafarer, although it might seem quite a bit different, it's not really any different than being a professional athlete of sorts. In the professional basketball leagues or professional football leagues, there's no age limit that's saying that a athlete can or cannot work beyond a certain age. It's purely about their physical ability to continue to compete and perform at the highest level, which will ensure them to have a new contract when it's time for them to renew their contracts. And there's no difference in the maritime industry. Employers are always going to be looking to hire the best possible players for their team. And this includes the ones that are the most physically fit, able to cope with the physical demands of the job, and those who are going to be resistant to injury and illness. So I really don't think that this is something that need to be legislated or even can be legislated, because there's nothing to legislate for and there's nothing to legislate against. The shipping industry, in particular with regard to manpower, is one that is contractual, where employers hire and rehire crew members based on their performance and their physical fitness. So if a seafarer reaches a certain age where it's difficult for him to find employment because ship owners are looking for younger crew, that is not a hard limit which is set in any regulatory documentation. It's simply the criteria that are used from one principle to the next to determine what profile of crew they want working for their company. You might have a company that wants only younger crew, or you might have a company that wants more older, more experienced crew. You might have some companies that will allow their crew to work until whatever age. They don't consider age at all. But these are factors and criteria which rest entirely with the employers. They're the ones who are hiring, they're the ones who are offering the jobs, and they therefore are the ones that can determine what kind of employee and what are the hiring criteria they're going to use. So the short answer is there is no legislation, there are no laws which can be enacted to protect the seafarers against a limitation which, frankly speaking, does not exist.
Chief, thank you for that answer. Chief, ikaw, para sa'yo, sa ilang years na nasa agency ka, nasa manning agency ka, ano po ba yung ano, meron ba talaga tayong nag-e-exist? Marami ba tayong ano, ano yung masasabi ninyo na pwedeng gawin ng mga marino para sugpuin itong ano na age limit? Unang-una, meron ba talagang limit?
There's no such thing as age limit. Gaya ng sinabi ni Miguel, there's no law. There's no such thing as age limit law. However, we have the law, the retirement age law. In fact,
Mhm.
at the age of 60 in our government, you are considered as at the retirement age. In the military, at the age of 56, whether you like it or not, you will be retired. Unless otherwise, you are extended. But you are still strong. At the age of 56, you are still strong. And there was a law, an agreement between POEA and SSS. That is the reason why they have the memorandum of agreement to collect or let the seafarers a mandatory contribution on the SSS for their retirement. Because
Hmm.
during our time, there's no such thing as SSS contribution for your retirement. Now there is a retirement fee, a contribution, wherein at the age of 60, you are entitled for retirement fee, unless otherwise again you are actively working and holding a position in one company. So your retirement age will be adjusted to 65, just like me. However, on board the ship, there is also a freedom of the ship owners to select the their crew, because according to the study, there are certain age, let's say 50, the output is declining. The output
Hmm.
of 50 years old is declining. It is not increasing. Whereas at 35 years old, continuously increasing. So And again, you have to consider also the so-called vacancy. If there was a time when we are running out of seafarers, of course, even though you are already 68 years old, you have to hire him because you want him to fill up the vacancy. It depends, but at the moment, it is now the privilege of the ship owners to implement what they want. Remember, you cannot implement the so-called I'm already 65 years old and still capable. But the ship owners are still the ship owners. They will select what they want. We are in a contractual basis.
I think
Yun yung masasabi ko na kung may privilege yung tao na magtrabaho, may privilege din yung ship owners na mamili ng tao. Ang ganda yung binigay ni Miguel na example, a basketball player. Yeah? At the age of 40, medyo sa susunod, hindi na i-renew ang contract mo. Kasi may mga 28 years old na maliliksi kaysa yung 40 years old na pag tumakbo, dadaan-daanan na lang ng 25 years old, 28 years old. So, walang pagkakaiba. Walang pagkakaiba yung ganyan.
mm.
Uh,
Totoo
dito
po yun.
sa amin, mayroon kaming age limit. Gaya ng sabi ko noon. Kung hindi ka palipat-lipat, pumirmi sa maganda, 5 at least. Considering your health also. Kung healthy ka until 65, they might consider you hiring. But if you are jumping from one company to another, I doubt they will hire you at the age of 65.
I think that's a very good point that you raise, Chief. Kasi number one, seafarers are contractual workers. So, I guess doon pa lang po, makikita nyo na hindi siya, ibig sabihin, porke nagsimula kayo sa isang kumpanya, ang seaman, ay next contract ay garantisado na meron silang susunod na contract. Dahil nga po contractual ang mga seafarers. Meron pong comment si RJ Bayobay Tubal. Sabi niya, I hope they have retirement for the seafarers. Ano po masasabi ninyo dyan? Miguel, do you wanna go first?
Sure. I think it's difficult to establish some sort of retirement plan for seafarers when the very contractual nature of their employment often leads to a journeyman component of their career. And what I mean by that is seafarers are not obliged to stay and work for only one principal. In fact, seafarers that have long careers in the industry are usually ones that maybe have worked for multiple ship owners. When what the particular ship owner opportunity comes to an end, they will look for another employee. And so, since it's possible for crew to shift from one principal to another, how can there be a retirement plan that is provided by the employers for the seafarers? This is something that I think is really not possible. What I do think is important, though, is for each seafarer to take responsibility for their own retirement plan and use their income to make contributions to whatever program they have. Um, I'll give an example. In the United States, most companies and corporations don't offer retirement or pension plans for their employees anymore. What they have in the United States is a retirement plan called a 401k plan. And this 401k plan is a retirement plan which is owned by and managed by each individual employee. Now, in those cases, when an employee gets paid, they can choose to make a tax-free contribution into their 401k plan, of a part of their compensation. And some employers might choose to make a matching contribution as well. Um, but in any case, if a worker changes a job from one company to another, his retirement plan, his 401k plan, moves with him. So if I'm a U.S. worker and I work at the General Electric, and then I work for Donlin Corporation, and then I work for ARI Corporation, I might have worked for three different companies over a period of 10 years. But my retirement plan continues to grow from company to company because it's under my name. And I'm the one that's choosing how much of my income am I going to place into my retirement fund. This is no different than what any employer, land-based or otherwise, would do. But what this allows is that seafarers can then build and control and maintain their own retirement plans, regardless whether they work for one principal or 10 principals over their career. Um, so again, it's really a matter of responsibility. Now, before the seafarers go up in arms and think that I'm recommending that they provide for themselves something which should be provided by their employers, I say this. I say simply this: seafaring affords a level of income which is significantly greater than land-based comparable jobs. Number one. Number two, the income that the seafarers generate is tax-free. Number three, there are no deductions or contributions to for retirement plans which are taken out of the salaries, which means to me that because of the contractual nature of the business and the inability for principals to provide benefits, which would normally be expected from a traditional land-based job, it does not leave the seafarers in any way less able to provide those benefits for themselves. I think it's about education. We all recognize the need for certain benefits. We all recognize the need for health care for our families. We all recognize the need to provide medical care for our families. And we all recognize the need to save for the future. The difference that is with the seafaring jobs is that the seafarers themselves have more than ample opportunity and financial resources to apply some discipline to their financial management and make sure that they themselves are providing the necessary benefits to themselves and to their families using the resources that they have.
Mhm. Chief?
Yeah, in addition to what Miguel said, maybe our seafarers are thinking of a free retirement. There's no such thing as free retirement. Meaning, if you want a real retirement after you a certain age, you reach a certain age, there must be a big deduction from your present salary until you reach, just like Singapore. Singapore, they are whether you are working on shore or at sea, you are deducted a big amount, and then your employer are contributing also an amount for your retirement plan. But if you're thinking, as seafarers are thinking of free retirement without any contribution, I think that is impossible. no employer will give you a free retirement. You have to invest. One is you prepare for yourself a retirement plan through an insurance company. Again, going back to what Mr. Miguel said, you have to be disciplined in handling your income. That's the best way to do it, because I know most of our seafarers how they spend their money, but there are few seafarers, they know how to handle their money, and those are the people who are able to put aside for their future. Uh, a simple thing, simple. You have to keep it for today, so tomorrow you have something to take out.
That's true. Before we continue, Rodolfo Tatlong Hari watching right now. Hello, good afternoon po. Hi, Rodolfo. Sabi ni Diva Ganaban, that's true. We seafarers will need to discipline ourselves to prepare for retirement. It is a personal responsibility. Thank you, Mr. Rocha. And then, galing naman kay Mars Lawrence Francia, wala naman talagang nakaset na limit sa age. Dapat hanggang anong age ba ang acceptable para mag-work on board? And to add to that, Mr. Francia, I think nasa seafarer din, until what age, ay tatanong ko sa mga viewers natin ngayon, sa lahat po ng mga seafarers na nanonood sa amin ngayon, until what age, hanggang anong edad po ba acceptable sa inyo na magtrabaho pa sa barko? Continue po, Mr. Rocha.
Well, I think there's two things. The first thing I'll do is I'll address what Lawrence Francia had said with regard to what is an acceptable age for employment, and I think that there are two different ways to consider this. One thing is, how long will an employer let me continue to work, and how long am I gainfully able to be employed, versus at what age will looking for a new job become more difficult. Because if a seafarer is working with a particular principal for a number of years through their 30s and into their 40s, that employer would likely base their terms for reemployment not necessarily on a specific age, but on the ability for them to continue to perform the job at the highest level, which means that a hardworking, proficient, healthy seafarer who might be reaching their 40s or 50s could easily extend their career by continuing to perform well. The opposite might the opposite is going to be true if you happen to be a seafarer who's in your 50s and you're out looking for a new job. You don't have the same track record and the same experience with a particular employer, in which case it might be more difficult for a career to be extended. So it's really two different types of situations that need to be considered to figure out how long you can work. But I'd like to backtrack quickly to what Engineer Gascon had said, and reiterate this: nothing is free. There's no free rides in the world. Certainly not in seafaring, and certainly not in the rest of the world. Nothing comes for free. We at CF Sharp have a pension program for our employees here. That as they work, we deduct contributions from their pay, so they pay into their pension plan, and we as the employer also contribute to the pension plan. Now, that might seem to be advantageous, and certainly it doesn't take much thinking for the employees to worry about their pension plan, because they're trusting in CF Sharp, in our case, or the employer, to make the right decisions to ensure their future. But I think that there is a disadvantage in this way of doing business, because why should somebody place all of their responsibility for their retirement fund in the hands of their employer. The seafarers have the advantage of taking the money that they want to set aside and choosing how they want to invest those resources. Rather than letting their employer decide how they're going to invest their retirement money, seafarers have the absolute ability to say, instead of the portion that the employer might take, why don't I set that aside myself and I'll make the decision. Do I want to invest in stock market? Do I want to invest in developing a business? Do I want to put that money to work in money lending? Do I want to use that money to buy T-bills, treasury bills, or bonds? There's many different kinds of money saving opportunities and plans. And I believe that the advantage for the seafarer is that whether they work for one principal or 10 principals, or whether their career is short or long, they have control of their money, they have control of their financial resources, and therefore they can have control of how they set up their retirements. So I think the first thing to do is get this idea out of your head that you're getting something for free. There's no free medical, there's no free retirement, there's no free anything. Everything gets paid for. And if you're being given a benefit by your employer like that, if you're a land-based, it's because the employer is taking a deduction from your pay to help to subsidize these benefits. So no free rides, number one. And back to the age limit again, certainly it'll be a lot easier to maintain your employment into later years if you continue to stay with a principal and prove your worth than if you try to go out and find a new job at an advanced age.
It's like taking control of your own life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And taking control in your own life in a way that most workers in the workforce today do not have. Most employees, regular employees, land-based employees, do not have the same kind of ability to take control of their own resources and their own finances for tax-free as the seafarers do.
Yes. Chief, um, ano ang madadagdag nyo dito? I mean, considering na I think maraming mga marino, kasi I always hear na sa mga marino natin na ang baba ng sweldo ko. Ay, mababa lang ang sweldo ko. Kaya lilipat ako sa ibang kumpanya kasi mababa lang ang sweldo ko. Hindi po ba? Pwede nyo po bang ipaliwanag kung parang hindi yata marami yatang hindi nakaka-appreciate kung gaano kalaki ang sweldo ng mga marino kumpara sa mga nagtatrabaho dito sa Pilipinas.
Malaki ang diferensya. Malaki ang diferensya. Ang isang crewing operation dito lang sa land base, ang crewing operation, ang sweldo nila ay between 50 to 70,000. 50 to 70. Magkano lang yun? $1,500. Whereas seafarers, if you are a master or chief officer, oh man, you are receiving $4,000. You could just imagine $4,000 as 200,000. But mind you, at the end of the day, end of the month, this guy receiving 70,000 working ashore could save more than a guy receiving $4,000. That is the big question. You can just imagine a young officer who are now, they have decided not to push through their career as seafarers. When they had this second officer license or chief mate license, they opted not to go back on shore, on board. They prefer to stay here on shore. Why? They could save more. They will be with their family. They are happy while their kids are growing. They know how to tighten their belt. Kumbaga, ibabagay mo na kung ano yung yung butas ng uhalis mo sa baro mo, yun din ang laki ng butonis, sabi nga nila eh. Pag mas malaki yung butas ng butonis mo, maliit yung butonis, mali na yon, mali. Mas malaki yung na-drain kaysa yung pumapasok. Hindi ko maintindihan eh, kasi 18 years din akong nagbarko. Hindi ko maintindihan, 18 years akong nagbarko. Nakaipon ako eh. Wala namang is nung araw. Wala talaga, wala kang pinag-uusapan na pension. Pero yung pag-iipon mo, mas malaki ang kikitain ng inipon mo kung kikita siya against your pension na iniisip mo. Kasi ang pension mo lang, gaya ko, SSS pension ko, maximum, 15,000. Now, I paid that since in the 80s. In the 80s. So, I am now receiving my pension 15 or 16,000 maximum. So, if you have been paying religiously ng maximum, you expect at the retirement age of 60, you will be receiving this amount. Pero ito, maliit lang kung ikumpara mo doon sa maipon mo, then yung maipon mo, irorolyo mo, kikita, mas malaki ang kita. Kaya, inuulit ko yung management ng sarili ninyong pera. Yun ang pinaka-importante. How you handle your own money. Sabi nga ni Mr. Miguel, kayo ang pinakaswerte. Why? Because tax-free kayo. Tax-free. Whereas we pay the tax here in Philippines. Yung ginamit kong ehemplo kanina, 70,000 ang sweldo niya. It will still undergo the so-called tax. Kaya ang matatanggap lang niya, mga 60 na lang. Yung 10,000 na punta na sa tax. But for seafarers, tax-free, you could just imagine. Laking pribilehiyo.
That's true. I have a question for younger seafarers who are watching us na, for those who are watching us who are like just starting their career. What would you say would be the best steps for them to have if they want a longer career? Let's say they really just love seafaring so much. What should they do to have a longer career in seafaring? Aside from taking care of their bodies physically and emotionally, what are the other things they should do?
If I can, I think that there's a number of things that can be done to try to extend a career on board ship. One of the first one that comes to mind is the ability and the dedication towards continued advancement on board. It's certainly able. The higher in rank you get, the longer you'll be able to work on board, because the less your job is going to demand the same kind of physical performance as if you're a lower ranking seafarer. Now, I know in the Philippines, there is a generalization that exists where the Filipino officers don't seem to continue their advancement beyond the level of junior officer. There's many Filipino crew who are on officer track that reach the level of third mate or third engineer, and then somehow decide that that's as far as they want to go. They no longer spend the time and the money to advance their education and training, and then on top, do the work on board to show their employer that they want to continue to rise in the ranks. The longer you can continue to show your worth, the longer you can continue to maintain viability, the longer you can maintain education for yourself and show that you can advance from third mate to second mate to chief mate and eventually master, there's no reason why you cannot extend your career into your 60s if you take care of your health and you continue. The problem becomes when the majority of seafarers cease to advance themselves, in some cases beyond even being an AB. And for the officers, beyond being a third mate. And what that leads to is eventually a group or category of seafarers who are of advanced age but of lower rank. And as we know, in any business, the lower ranking positions are usually reserved for younger employees who can be developed and have a bright future. In some ways, for a ship owner to have a 55-year-old third mate is damaging to their organization, because while that third mate might be able to do the job quite well, he won't be able to do it for longer. And he certainly is not going to advance himself to be a second mate or a chief mate or a captain. So what that man is doing is occupying a spot for a younger man who might be in his late 20s or early 30s who is already looking to continue to advance. So that's why ship owners are hesitant to keep junior officers for advanced age, because they create a roadblock for younger officers who might have potential to reach higher ranks. In any business, it's always better to develop your own people. It's never a good idea to have to go out onto the market and hire a manager or an executive to come into my company and expect them to do a good job. We always want to develop our own. So for those who don't want to develop themselves, they're the ones that are going to be at a higher risk of shortening their career and taking away an opportunity from a hungry young seafarer who is actually willing and dying to try to extend themselves. So beyond the physical fitness, beyond the mental acuity, it's about motivation to continue to advance and develop your career, to continue to develop skills, to continue to educate, to be educated and be trained, and then show the desire to advance yourself. If you make it a target to be a captain or to be a chief engineer and you want to work for a very long time, you will have the best opportunities to do so. If you think you can do that as a AB or bosun or third engineer or assistant deck officer, your chances are going to be much more limited.
That's really good point. I actually don't get this mentality. Minsan may mga nakakausap akong mga marino na pag tinatanong ko, "Are you working now on your promotion?" Ang sasagot po sa akin ay, hindi ma'am, masaya na ako sa posisyon kong ito." I mean, I understand being, contentment to a certain degree. But shit, natatawa kayo. Sabi yata.
Yeah.
Oh, Papa.
Naka-mute ako. Mute.
Hindi, pwede, hindi ka naka-mute. Naririnig ka namin.
Okay. Ang tanong kasi, meron kasi nagtatanong, palagi na yan, palagi ko nababasa. Maraming nagtatanong sa akin. Ano daw ginagawa ng ating mambabatas? Bakit hindi sila gumagawa ng batas na bawal ang age limit? Dapat daw idaan sa batas. Ang masabi ko, kung idaan natin yan sa batas, wala nang marinong Pilipinong matitira dito sa Pilipinas. Idaan natin yan sa batas. Pipilitin natin ang mga ship owner na German, na British, na Norwegian, na Greek, na Hapones, na kumuha ng matatanda. Ang sabihin lang ng ng Japanese ship owner, Greek ship owner, bye-bye, Philippines. I will go to Vietnam. I will look for younger officers there. I will go to Indonesia. I will go to Ukraine. I will go to Poland. I will go to so many countries. Bakit? Kayo lang ba ang marino? Nilipat na ako. tuturuan mo ako kung anong gawin ko? Ako may-ari ng barko? Aba? Ibang klase kayo. Ha? Yung namamalimos? Yun ang ano? Yun ang magdidikta? No. I am the owner of the ship. Noong araw, magagawa natin yan. Noong panahon na 2007, na nagkahirapan na maghanap ng opisyal, pwede yun. Kasi nung panahon na yun, hindi pa nakahanda yung mga ship owner. Pero dahil doon, gumawa ng paraan ang ship owner. Nag-develop sila ng mga opisyal nila doon sa Eastern Europe, sa Vietnam, sa Myanmar, sa Indonesia, sa India, sa Pakistan. O sabihin natin, mas magaling tayo kaysa mga yan. Sabihin naman nila, bakit? Nung araw ba, mas magaling kayo kaysa amin? Hindi naman kayo mas magaling kaysa amin. Gumaling kayo dahil pinagtiyagaan namin kayo. Itong mga to, pagtiyagaan namin to, gagaling din ito mga to. Gagaling din to, papantay din to sa mga Pilipino. Kaya hindi nga natin sila pwedeng diktahan. Mabuti kung pag-aari natin yung barko. Ngayon, sabihin mo, adi, kung ayaw nila, ayaw ko rin. Di, huwag kang magbarko. Huwag kang magbarko kasi ang may-ari ng barko ang magdidikta. Ang may-ari ng barko ang magdidikta. Hindi tayo. Hindi tayo ang Ngayon, gusto mo na may pera ka. Ha? Gusto mo na may pera ka. Gusto mo mag-retire ka ng maaga. Pero mali naman ang sinusunod mong landas. Gusto mo ubusan ng pera. Paano ka makapag-retire ng maaga? Pero ito, diretsahan lang talaga ang masabi ko sa inyo. Hindi po pwede gumawa ng batas para pilitin natin ang mga ship owner na tanggapin tayo kahit na matanda na tayo. Hindi po yan pwede. Dahil lilipat lang sila sa ibang bansa, lalo nang maapektuhan yung ibang Pilipino na gusto pa sana sumakay ng barko. Dinadamay na ninyo yung ibang mga bata-bata pa na gusto pang magbarko. Ang layunin nga, bakit kami may programa na ganito? Bakit kami mayroong ganitong virtual, na programa upang ipaalam sa inyo na gusto namin na walang marino na matanda na magretiro na pulubi. Ang layunin namin na sana lahat ng marino sa edad ng 45 pwede na magretiro na may kakayahang magretiro, may financial freedom. Yan ang ibig namin gawin. Yan ang ibig namin mangyari. Kaya nga bukas meron na naman tayong usapang pangkabuhayan. Tuloy-tuloy yung aming pagbigay sa inyo ng karunungan, kaalaman upang maari kayong magpagretiro ng maaga katulad ni Chief Engineer Gascon, Chief Engineer Captain Flores, Captain Bert Sabay. Kami, nagretiro kami, wala pang 50. Ako pinakamatanda sa kanila nagretiro. Nagretiro ako sa edad na 45, minto ako pagbabarko. Kaya nga, pwede naman yan kung meron kayo palaging programa para sa sarili nyo. Para sa sarili nyo. Sa edad na ganito, third mate na. Sa edad na ganito, second mate na. Sa edad na ganito, chief mate na. Sa edad na ganito, kapitan na. Sa edad na ganito, meron ka ng farm, meron ka ng negosyo, na kahit anong mangyari, hindi ka na pwede ka nang magretiro na hindi ka na sasakay ng barko. Ganon.
Actually, I think
Yeah.
yun yung nagiging problema na walang programa kasi sa mga nakikita ko, minsan sa mga comments, sa mga iba nating mga episodes, unang-una sinasabi nila dapat mawala ang age limit. Pero, takot din naman sila to take more responsibility. At the same time, takot sila na ma-promote dahil that will require more responsibility. So, ang gusto nila, nandun sila sa posisyon nila, walang pag-angat, pero tatanggapin pa rin sila kahit na matandas na sila.
Naloko na.
yun
Hindi
nga po
nga
siguro.
hindi nga ganyan ang buhay eh. Hindi nga ganyan ang buhay. Hindi nga ganyan ang buhay na yung gusto mo, yun ang masusunod. Hindi nga ganyan eh. Malupit ang buhay. Gusto mo maging successful ka, pero gusto mo maging bobo ka pa rin. Ha? Gusto mo maging successful ka, pero gusto mo rin bobo ka at the same time. Hindi nga ganyan eh. Hindi nga ganyan. Hindi ganyan ang buhay. Hindi
Oo.
ganyan ang buhay. Yung mga naging successful, yun talaga ang mga taong nagsisikap. Nagsisikap siya na umangat siya. Kaya maaga siyang gigising, nag-aaral continuous ang kanyang pag-aaral. Yan ganyan talaga ang buhay. Hindi yung matulog ka lang, nakahiga ka lang, tapos mahuhulog ang grasya
Yes.
sa iyo. Tapos ano gusto
Time
mo,
out.
yun ang mangyayari.
Time out. Wait, let's welcome our one of our panelists, Captain Bert Sabay. Cap! We miss you, Cap!
Gracious morning. Gracious.
Gracious morning. Yes. Oh, wow. I've been struggling to get in. But anyway, good gracious morning, everyone. The topic is very interesting and not yet enlightening because it is still a challenge. The retirement of our seafarers, their future reintegration into the society is still not well planned, not clear. And I agree. I agree very well with the opinion that first of all, beggars cannot be choosers. That's true. We are servants of the global fleet, so we cannot dictate the employers, which are the ship owners. Even the Philippine government itself is not in the position to dictate ship owners because they have their own sovereignty via their respective flags. So we have really a big challenge here on how to prepare our seafarers for that day when they don't need to come back to sea anymore. But there must be some solutions to this. If I may share my thought to this, in 2009 I released a 4 series of articles regarding Filipino seafarers for Philippines only. The title is quite aggressive, but the concept is if the ship owners wanted Filipino seafarers, then they might as well register their vessels under the Philippine flag. The problem is we don't even have a law allowing ship registry into the Philippine international shipping. So that's the main stumbling block, because if we have a flag like the flag of the Panama or Isle of Man or Bermuda or Bahamas, then we now have the opportunity to enact laws and regulations that will benefit both the ship owners and the seafarers. There will be genuine link, and the relationship between the administration, the ship owner, and the seafarers will be very close. And one of that is the retirement fund. Some organization call it the Provident Fund. Others call it the SSS or the GSIS. If for as long as a Filipino seafarer is serving a vessel under a Philippine flag, which hopefully will be acceptable to ship owners, then there's a fund to their retirement, both ways, by way of contribution of the seafarers and the ship owners. Others call it forced savings. So there's so many ways to prepare for this, but unfortunately, the avenues are closed. So that's just a piece of my mind for this issue. Thank you.
Miguel?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something that I think is one of the things that could really be helpful if people were to take up and try to adjust their perspective on things. Because in focusing on all the things that the seafarers seem that they think they don't have or think that they don't get, it's unfortunate that in this case, like many cases, we don't know what we have until it's gone. And as Engineer Ramirez was saying, we are no longer the only supplier of manpower in the world. There's many others competing. And what many seafarers fail to appreciate because of their lack of perspective is the tremendous opportunity which they have in taking on this type of employment. We touched on a little bit earlier about the variance and disparity between working on shore or versus working on board. Ashore, you have lower paying jobs for comparable work. You have a high level of taxation. And on board, you have a tremendous opportunity to get paid multiple times more for a similar type of job ashore with less tax exposure, less taxes that you have to pay, and a greater ability to manage your funds in a way that can set you up for the future. This is a tremendous opportunity. I tell young people who are thinking about this career, there is no other
Tubig.
employment that you can find on this God's green earth which affords an individual to save as much money as seafaring does. You imagine the average seafarer who goes on board, they don't have to pay their rent, they don't have to buy their own food, they don't have to pay for their medical expenses, they don't really have to pay for anything to sustain their own living expenses. So if a seafarer who's getting paid, say, $1,000 a month for their contract, we're talking to somebody that's a utility worker or an OS, a worker that's earning on the low end of the earning scale. At the end of a 10-month contract, if that seafarer manages to control their spending, they might find themselves holding as much as $500,000 in savings. There's no other job in the world that you can earn being paid $1,000 a month that at the end of 10 months you could have saved $500,000. There's none. So I think the attitude adjustment should be to learn to appreciate the many advantages and benefits that are provided, the earning opportunities that are afforded, versus trying to see what it is that they're not getting. Frankly speaking, any seafarer that's concerned with age limits is probably the ones who have failed to prepare adequately during the length of their careers.
I totally agree. Again, take power of your life and be responsible for your own life. Anything
And
else,
learn to
Chief?
appreciate what you have. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, I would agree to that, that they are making the age limit policy as the alibi for their failure to prepare for their age.
Wow, I love that this cap. That's really very blunt and very, very true. Masakit
Parang
ang katotohanan. Real
Somebody
talk.
has to be blamed or something has to be blamed.
parang
Very
ganito.
frank, straightforward, uh, opening the door for them to understand.
Yeah.
Parang
Yeah,
ganito yan,
although
Captain Bart.
yeah,
Pa-
I am a believer of nasa abilidad, wala sa edad. But edad is also a reality. As mentioned earlier, I managed to catch up that the lower position is for the younger age, and the higher you aspire for a position that goes with the age. By the time you get the highest position, you must be of age, and there's a limit to that. You cannot be on board the ship forever.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yes, we
Yes.
have responsibilities, each one, seafarers, and also I believe our own government has also responsibilities for this by way of probably opening avenues, education, making this part of the competence of our seafarers for the future, that they cannot
Yes.
sail forever.
Yes, Papa.
Captain Bart, ganito yan, no? Yun na nga, may kasabihan na, if at first you don't succeed, blame others. if at first you don't succeed, blame others. Sisihin mo yung iba kung kung hindi ka nagtagumpay sa buhay. Pero gusto kong ipaalaala sa mga ating mga marino na sa kapanahonan namin, ang laki ng binabawas sa tax namin. Kasi kung sumusweldo kayo ngayon, mga chief engineer, kapitan, kumikita ng $10,000, kalahating milyon yan. Ang tax ninyo nasa mga 40%, no? Kalahating milyon na ang matitira sa inyo dyan, mga 200,000 na lang mahigit. No? Less than 300,000. Ako po ang nagsulong niyan sa Gankay ko Commission, kaya nung mabuo ang RA 8042, Migrant Workers and Overseas Filipino Act of 1995, kaya wala ng tax ang lahat ng mga OFW. Ako po ang nagsulong niyan. Ngunit hindi ako nakinabang niyan. Sinasabi ni Nelson, walang is limit basta hindi aalis sa kumpanya. Nelson, tama yan. Meron akong kasama sa Cargo Safeway noong araw, nasa 60 anyos na siya, boso namin. Pero, alam mo ngayon, ang Cargo Safeway, hindi na rin tumatanggap ng ganyan sa 60 anyos, mahigit na boson. Bakit? Karamihan ng mga matatanda na marino, no, gagawa ng panghuling sakay, pag one time, big time. Sasakay, tapos, kunyari, nahulog sila, kunyari, nagkasakit sila, tapos idemanda yung kanilang mga kumpanya. Yan ang isa sa mga dahilan kung bakit hindi na rin tumatanggap yung mga ship owner ng mga matatanda. Kasalanan din ng mga marinong Pilipino yan. Dahil sa daming kaso na sinasampa, nagsakit-sakitan, kunyari nahulog ko no. Yeah.
Meron tayong echo. Baka dapat lower yung speaker ng inyong monitor. Yes,
Yeah.
echo yan.
Maraming katotohanan sa pagbabarko. There are so many realities that denial is one of them. But I believe it takes a lot of maturity for our seafarers to accept and understand that there's a limit in going to sea, and age may not be the actual issue, but the turnover of employment for the younger ones is even a bigger issue. We need also to provide doors for the young generation to come in to the profession. So it's a cycle. Somebody leave the job, somebody takes over the job, somebody retires, somebody joins the profession, and all of these are realities. So meaning, as I have said, we cannot sail forever. So the issues, another reality, which is a sad reality, are these cases filed by one-time, big-time retiring seafarers. That's also an unfortunate reality. It's happening. It's been happening. Yeah. So that really hurts a lot of ship owners and employers. Sad to say. And there's a collaboration, not only among seafarers, but even into the higher levels of some agencies. Those are open secrets. So we have problems that at the end of the day, the seafarers are suffering, the workers. So I think they will have to be smart, to prepare for this, and on their own, they should be ready for retirement until such time that the system provides a perfect avenue, a provident fund for the retirement. But as mentioned earlier, loyalty really has a lot of benefits.
So, I'm curious, tinuturo ba to sa school, sa mga maritime schools, yung tamang career path? Ano yung mga repercussions of their actions? There's nothing in the maritime schools, wala?
Yeah, these are probably part of lifelong learning, some soft skills that has to be learned through actual experience. So if there will be programs, I believe this will help in preparing our seafarers. Part of the humanity subjects or courses that
Yeah.
would make them understand the future. Visioning is part of that. Try to vision yourself 10, 20, 30 years from now and do your actions now, 30 years ahead or 20 years ahead. So these are skills and
Tubig pa.
some soft skills that can be developed by the seafarers if allowed to. So that's a good idea. I think I'll make it a part of the education.
Yes. So before we end, speaking of that, in that note, before we end, ano ang if there's a chance for you to talk to an aspiring seafarer, a cadet, a student seafarer, what would your advice be so that they don't have to be afraid of age limit? Let's start with our guest, Mr. Miguel Rocha.
If I had a chance to speak with the cadets, and I do have opportunities to speak with the cadets quite frequently, I tell them always the same thing, that they need to, number one, establish some discipline around managing their finances and securing their future themselves. And number two is to continue to seek advancement, to never stop learning, to never stop being educated, never stop training, and never stop seeking advancement. You know, one of our principals invested quite a lot in a very robust cadet program where they sponsored students through their university studies in an attempt to bring them on board and have them all pursue the careers to the highest levels. Unfortunately, the vast majority of these cadets failed to bring themselves up beyond the junior category level, which number one shortened their careers, and number two gave the principal a lack of confidence in the program, which meant that they took fewer cadets in the future because they didn't believe that Filipino cadets were the ones that were going to see their careers through to the highest levels. So I would say number one, make sure to manage your finances and your resources from the beginning to secure your future. And number two, to continue to work hard to advance yourself and advance your career so that you can have a long lasting a career on board ship.
Thank you for that, Mr. Rocha. Chief? Chief?
Yeah, an aspiring cadet, from the word cadet, I think your salary is not yet enough to manage. However, that is the starting point. If you can save your money based on that small amount, I think you will have a good future. Not only managing your money, but also managing yourself for your future. Uh, Remember, that is your first step to become an officer. That's why you are cadet. That determines whether you will be able to go up there. At the first month or second month, you could feel whether you will be lucky enough to be like what your master or chief engineer on board are. So at an early age, manage yourself correctly. Still, the discipline is the best uh, tools in you. Wala nang tatalo sa disiplina. Kahit nga marunong ka, kung wala ka, karamihan sa marurunong kasi walang disiplina din eh. Yung tamang-tama lang ng galing, may disiplina. Yun namang hindi masyadong marunong, wala rin disiplina. wala ka pupunta. So, disiplina lang ang ikakaunlad ng profession mo din. Hindi lang ikakaunlad ng bayan, sarili mo talaga ang disiplina. Kung may disiplina ka, I'm sure you can handle your money wisely. Ang kasabihan nila sa napapanood ko sa TV, just save 20% of your salary monthly. After 10 years, you can retire if you want. You have that money. Ganun lang ang masasabi ko. Thank you.
Kap,
Yes, if I have the chance and opportunity, my first advice to aspiring cadets, they aspire to become officer upon graduation. If they fail to become an officer after graduation, they should aspire to become officer as soon as they can. Because if it's their aspiration, they will do anything and everything to demonstrate that they are capable of becoming an officer. And I think and I believe the rest will be history if they keep on leveling up in their profession. Money is of a consequence from the performance of their profession professionally with discipline, dignity, and integrity. So that would be my advice.
thank you. Papa,
Kaya yung sa iyo, Kap, yung if sa salitang Tagalog o wikang Tagalog, kung ang problema lang sa kung sana, kamuntik at sa kawala, para sa akin, pareha lang. Isa spelling lang nagka-diferensya. Ang problema kasi, sa nag-aaral pa siya, gusto talaga niya mapagkabobo. Gusto niya mapagkabobo, nag-aaral pa siya, magmulang elementary. Gusto niya maging bobo, ayaw niya mag-aral. Tapos, nag-graduate. Nung mag-graduate siya, bobo na siya. Ngayon, mag-apply. Ayaw tanggapin. Ayaw tanggapin. Ang sinisisi, wala siyang backer. Yan pala, nag-umpisa na sisihan. Wala siyang backer. Ngayon, may naawa. Tinulungan siya. Nakasakay. Pagdating sa barko, ganun din. Nagtanga-tangahan, magpagka din. Tapos, pag-uwi, ubusan din ng pera. Ubusan ng pera. Wala talaga siyang career path, no? Wala siyang balak na umasinso sa buhay niya. Tapos, na hanggang sa tumanda, ganun. Ganun lang. Na magpagkabobo, magpagkatamad, pero dapat may kwarta rin. Tapos, dapat kukunin pa rin siya. Ayan ang problema. Kaya nga, kung gusto mo ng ganyan, ang masabi ko lang, walang ship owner na magkagusto sa'yo. At wala rin mapopromote sa'yo kasi wala ka naman lisensya. Tamad ka pa. Tapos, ang gusto mo lang, na pag-uwi mo, gasto rin ang gusto, ubusan, tapos sakay naman ulit. Hindi nga eh. Dapat nga may plano ka sa buhay mo. Umpisa pa lang, na pag-elementary ka pa lang, meron ka ng pangarap kung maging ano ka. And then, yung grasya hindi nahuhulog galing sa langit. Talagang pagsikapan mo yan. Magsikap ka rin na ma-promote, magsikap ka na magkaipon ka. Kaya, ang mangyari, maaga pa lang, may pera ka na, may bahay ka, may negosyo ka, maka-retire ka ng maaga. Yan ang diferensya. Pero yung naghahantay ka na puro swerte lang, aasa ka na yung ibang tao ang magbigay sa iyo ng swerte. Hindi po mangyari yan. Aasa ka na may senador o congressman na gagawa ng batas para tatanggapin ka. Hindi po mangyari yan. Maniwala kayo sa akin. Wala pong senador, wala pong congressman na gagawa ng batas sa ganyan. Yan lang po. Dapat may time frame kayo sa inyong pagmamarino. Kaya nga, pakinggan nyo kami tuwing Miyerkules kasi may programa kami na usapang pangkabuhayan upang walang marino na Pilipino na magretiro na pulubi. Maraming salamat.
Don't forget tomorrow, usapang kabuhayan. And always remember, accept responsibility for your actions, be accountable for your results, take ownership of your mistakes. That is how to take power back. That's how to take control of your life. So see you again next Tuesday, same time, 2 o'clock, kasama ang ating mga veteranong marino. Maraming salamat po sa panonood. See you again. Bye! Have a pleasant afternoon. Bye!
Bye.
Natin yung ano,
Good afternoon.
Sino yung presidente?
I think ang consensus naman ng lahat dito sa atin, kung hindi po ako nagkakamali, ay okay ang green lane pero dapat maayos ang pag-implement.
Sinasabi ninyo na wala kayong manalapitan, wala kayong tagapagtanggol. Nandito ako, 25 anyos na akong nagpagtanggol. Pero paano naman ako pagtatanggol sa inyo?
Pagkatapos
Lumatapos kayo?
nila sa school ng 3 years at magiging kadete sila. Pagbalik nila i-examine, yung kinuha nilang training noon o sa subject nila sa eskwelahan, may mga areas na uulitin ulit sa training.
At yung Article 9, ang linaw nun nakalagay doon, the convention shall not prevent an administration to adopt or to retain yung approved education and training.
Isang body na pwedeng tumulong, nabanggitin, na-recommend, ang UFS, pwede dahil may boses at pwedeng i-confront ang mga kinauukulan na kung sobra-sobra nga ang pa-training nila.
Doon po sa mga viewers natin na seafarers wives, siya rin po yung nagpupush na masama ang mga OFW spouses sa solo parent bill na under deliberation po ngayon sa Senado. Welcome po, Senator Risa Hontiveros. Jimmy Bondo. Good afternoon, Sir Jimmy.
Happy lockdown,
Our
everyone.
guest today is really a good example of a woman womaning up. You know, she is a lawyer involved in brand protection, trademarks and copyright enforcement, and she's also the founder of VLAD. Is it VLAD?
Yes, it's
VLAD, or Volunteer Lawyers Against Discrimination. Let's welcome po Attorney Divina Gracia Pedron.